We continue with the third lecture video on EPS. We now look at diluted earnings per share. The basic EPS is calculated by comparing the earnings with the number of shares currently in issue. However, if an entity has a commitment to issue shares in the future, for example, on the issue of options or the conversion of loan stock, this may result in a change in the basic EPS. The standard IAS 33 refers to such commitments as potential ordinary shares. These potential ordinary shares could dilute the EPS, so you need to compute the diluted EPS, which simply shows how the basic EPS would change if potential ordinary shares became ordinary shares. This acts as a warning measure of what may happen in the future for current shareholders. So when the potential shares are actually issued, the impact on the basic EPS will be twofold. The first is that the number of shares will increase, and the second is that there may be a change in earnings, e.g. lower interest charges. So this potential change in EPS is reflected in the calculation of the diluted EPS. We're going to look at a lecture question. In this question, Akon had the same 10 million ordinary shares in issue on both 1st April 20x1 and 31st March 20x2. On 1st April x1, the company issued 1.2 million $1 units of 5% convertible loan stock. Each unit of stock is convertible into 4 ordinary shares for one on 1st April 20x9 at the option of the holder. The following is an extract from Akon's statement of P&L and other comprehensive income for the year ended 31st March 20x2. Now, when you see the word convertible, we met this under financial instruments. Convertible simply means that this loan stock, the holder can continue receiving interest until the loan stock matures, and then in the final year they receive the interest and principal. But if they so wish, they may at a point of their choice convert the loan stock into shares so that they become shareholders. Under financial instruments, we also noted that it's a requirement of financial instrument standard that where a convertible loan has been issued, it should be split between the two components. It should be split between the debt component and the equity component. So that was under financial instruments, but under EPS, this convertible loan has the potential to dilute the EPS. So this standard now also requires that you need to show this potential dilution in the EPS, in the the previous year's EPS. So let's look at the requirement required to calculate the basic and diluted earnings per share for the year ended. So the basic EPS is the one you compute without taking into account the possible or the potential dilution. So the earnings to use for the basic is given there as 644,000. The current number of shares is 10 million. So 644,000 divided by 10 million gives us the basic EPS of 6.4 cents. Then we now look at the diluted EPS. Now we explained that the holder of the convertible loan can continue being paid interest. So what will happen is that if they choose to convert the loan stock into equity, then this interest of 60,000 would no longer be paid. The company will start saving that interest because they will not be paying that interest. So that's saving in interest will increase the profit of 644. But that increase in profit will be less the tax component, because since you know that interest is tax deductible, but when that interest is no longer being deducted, so that 60 we need to take out tax of 30% from that. That will give us 42. So our earnings will increase from 644 plus 42 will now be 686,000. And also, because they've decided to convert, the condition of conversion is that each unit of stock will be converted into 4 ordinary shares. So we are going to multiply the 1,200,000 units of loan stock times 4 ordinary shares to give you 4,800,000 shares. So the new number of shares will now increase from 10 million to 14,800,000. So we can now compute our diluted EPS as 686,000 divided by 14,800,000 to give us 4.64 cents as our diluted EPS. We look at another area which has got the potential to dilute earnings. These are share options or warrants. Potential shares on the exercise of options or warrants are split as follows. You've got shares that would be issued, that have been issued, shares that would have been issued if the cash received had been used to buy shares at average market price for the period, and the remaining shares are treated as having been issued at no consideration. Share options is used as an incentive by companies to try and motivate managers to work extra hard to improve wealth in the company. So the share options are offered to shareholders, sorry, not shareholders, but to employees if they meet certain conditions, usually an increase in the share price, or they meet certain targets which have been set, then the employees or the managers have got the option to buy shares in the company at a discount so that they become shareholders. That's what a share option is. So these options, they also have a potential to dilute the EPS. You need to memorize this formula given here. We use it to compute the dilution in EPS as a result of share options. So where share options or warrants have been issued, it is only the shares which are deemed to have been issued for no consideration which are added to the number of shares in issue when computing diluted EPS. Those shares which have been issued at full market price have no dilutive effect. We move to look at a lecture example. Galax has a profit for the year of 3 million it also has 1.4 million ordinary shares in issue during the year. Galax also had outstanding 250,000 options for the whole year with an exercise price of $15. The AMP of one ordinary share during the period was $20. The AMP, which is the average market price, which we use in that formula, required what is the diluted EPS. So we compute the diluted EPS using that formula. So we have the number of shares under options, which is 250. Then you compute the number that would have been issued at average market price, which is the 250 times 15, the exercise price. Okay, so they are only paying $15 for these shares instead of $20. So there's a shortage from the market price of $5. So those being paid for at $15 is what we compute, which is 187,500. We subtract that from the 250 shares under options to give us the 62,500, which is the number of shares which will be treated as issued for no consideration. So these 62,500 shares is what you are going to add to the current number of shares of 1.4, so to give us our diluted EPS of $2.05.